Welcome to the Better Things Podcast. This is a podcast where we take a look at each person's journey, and we hope to learn from our own individual journeys so we can leave the world in a better place than we found it, as well as look forward to the next chapter in our lives while passing on the wisdom that we gain through our life journeys to others who may walk through similar paths. And so this week, we're going to continue our series. Last week, we kind of looked at travel sports and youth sports in general. We looked at some statistics surrounding that. And so this week, we wanted to talk to some individuals who have walked through that journey and are now on the other side of that journey so we can gain some wisdom, better understanding. I'm a parent right now, right in the middle of that journey. So I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. But we have our senior pastor, Michael Estes.
Good to be here today.
Appreciate it. And our his oldest, Jackson Estes.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Apparently, Micah gave Maverick some advice yesterday.
Oh, boy.
Travel sports.
Okay.
He said, at some point in your life, you're going to be in a really pressure situation. And you're going to be up there to bat. You're going to strike out. He said, you're allowed to be as mad as you want to be. Just don't cry. That was his advice.
There you go.
I thought it was decent advice.
Yeah, that's good.
Jackson, what do you think?
I've cried multiple times while playing baseball. Not recently, but I've definitely cried before.
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? You know, kind of learning, and I do think that's an interesting thing with travel sports and youth sports in general is there's a lot of emotion in sports, even as adults, right? If we have we're just cheering for a team that we like, there's a lot of emotion that kind of gets into it, and so it makes sense for players to experience that even on a deeper level, and parents, seeing their children, walk through those, kind of roadblocks and walk through the emotional side of things as well. So yeah, I think that's tremendous, advice to kind of think through and be prepared for, right?
Yeah. Part of me wonders who it's harder for. Is it harder for the kid? Is it harder for the parent? I'd be curious to know what Jackson thinks about that. I think from my perspective, as a parent, it's so hard because I don't have any control over the situation. Once they go out there, it's them. I can't go on the field and hit for them, which is probably a great thing.
Yeah.
I can't go on the field and, make the pitch. I just have to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And that's it. We can have conversations afterwards, but I don't know. It may be harder for the kid on the field. I don't know.
I would say, I think it's probably harder for the parent, just knowing that, like you said, they have no control.
Yeah.
But at least as a player, if you mess up, you had control of that situation. You just mess it up, which is fine. But at least you had control over it, which I'd say is probably better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I experience that now. And of course, Maverick, he's still on the younger side of things, so it's not quite as competitive as it kind of becomes more so. But it's being that parent and recognizing the weight of that and having that, and again having that lack of control piece, I think is a big part of it. And I can think back through times I'm like, man, I'm nervous for him, right? And I know there are times you were probably nervous for Jackson, at those times, and and it's neat to kind of see how all that works together. And so, so I guess since we're kind of going down this road, Jackson, tell me about how did you baseball was your sport, and again, while that's going to be the weight of this podcast, doesn't necessarily the things you learned and experienced. I would imagine there's going to be tremendous overlay with other sports and youth sports in general. But tell me about your journey. How did you discover baseball kind of being your sport and the thing that you had that passion about and wanted to pursue?
Okay. I'm going to be honest. It was before my 10th grade season. I didn't really want to play baseball anymore because I just wasn't having fun. Just not at that point. I felt like I was having a lot of pressure, but I just didn't really enjoy it a whole lot. And it kind of felt like I was taking time out of my day. I could be doing other stuff. So I wasn't sure I was going to play college baseball. But then I got my first offer to Meridian Community College just probably a couple weeks before the season started.
This was before or after 10th grade?
This was during 10th grade.
During
10th grade before the season. The season starts in February, so it's probably January. I got that first offer. And I think that kind of changed my mind on that. So, yeah, I'd probably say when I got my first offers when I kind of wanted to pursue baseball a little bit more.
Okay, so it was kind of a, I guess as a young child and kind of doing some sports and stuff, participated in some things, but then you maybe ran into some burnout and fatigue.
Yeah, definitely.
And then when you started kind of getting that attention, it's like, okay, well, this is something that I'm pretty good at, and that kind of affirming piece, kind of helped recapture that passion a little bit. Yeah, and so growing up, did you play any other sports?
I played soccer for a little bit till I was 8 years old, and then I had to choose between baseball and soccer, and I chose baseball. And then I played basketball up until 8th grade, and I really enjoyed that. But again, I had to quit to play baseball. Then I played football for 2 weeks, and I got ran over by a Florida commit like 3 times, and so I quit after 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, so it's like, well, I've been hit. I realize I don't like getting hit, so that's enough.
Yeah, I wasn't big enough at that point to play football.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so each one of those kind of steps in your essentially your youth sports and baseball journey, how did you make that decision? Like you said, you had to choose kind of between soccer and baseball, then later had to choose between basketball and baseball, and you kind of kept coming back to baseball. What was it that influenced that decision and kind of helped you make that decision?
I think there's a part of me as a kid, it's like I always wanted to do this, and I really hadn't been that way about other sports. Like I never really wanted to play soccer. I never really wanted to play basketball at that time. And then I always wanted to play baseball. So that's kind of was in my head, and it still is in my head. Like if I ever feel like maybe I don't want to do this, it's like, oh, I've wanted to do this for so long, and so all of this would have been a waste if I kind of quit now. So yeah, that's what it's from.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, Michael, kind of on the parent side of things, what responsibility or role did you play in, walking Jackson through some of those decisions and coming to those roadblocks of saying, okay, hey, here's what we got to do. We've got to choose. We've got soccer here, baseball here. Can't do both.
Yeah.
So what kind of role as a parent did you see in that?
So Julie and I talked a lot about being able to manage the schedule as a family, and like part of the reason he had to pick soccer or baseball or soccer as early as he did is because those seasons overlapped a lot. And like there would be times where we would be at practice on a Monday for soccer, then we'd have practice for baseball on a Tuesday, then we would have church on Wednesday, then there would be another baseball or soccer practice the next day, and it became a thing. Then you had games. Most baseball tournaments took place over a weekend. There would have been times where we'd have had to play soccer games and then go to baseball games. I think that happened a couple times. Mm-hmm. And like we just looked at that and we were like, we didn't want that for him. We didn't want that for us. And we didn't really want to choose, but we just thought to ourselves, like, we also don't want to be run ragged by our schedule. We don't want our schedule to have, our sports schedule to have complete control over our life. And then later on, so when he started getting offers to go and play college baseball, the conversation changed at that point to, okay, what do you really want out of this? Like I asked them that question a couple times. Like, do we want to play a couple more years and get some education paid for, or is this something where you're like, I want to go to the place where I have the best chance to keep going after this? Do I want to play with my friends past high school? Am I interested in just going somewhere they are, or am I interested in going somewhere where a program gives me an opportunity to move to the next level? And ultimately, we told him, like, look, this is your decision. We have dreams for you. We have hopes for you, that sort of thing. But, like, it's not about what we want. It's about what you want out of this. And when he made the decision to go to Pearl River, which is where he's going to go, it was a decision that ultimately was based on what he believed was going to be the best next step for him. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah, and so like there were some places he could have gone that would have been a lot closer to home. He's not that far, but we're talking about 40 minutes down the road versus 2.5 hours. And there was a part of us that would have been really glad to have him that close. But I'm also glad he's going where he's going, because I really do believe the program that he's headed to is one that gives him a great opportunity to keep playing past the next 2 years. And so, like, sometimes it was a decision about that Julie and I had to make, and then sometimes it was a decision that we made in partnership with him.
Yeah. So kind of thinking through that journey and, those decisions kind of, I think it's a great question. It's like, what do you want to get out of that? And so kind of looking back over the youth sports kind of phase of this journey, how would you say the youth sports prepared you for your high school journey, and then kind of working through all that, and now eventually to be kind of at the end of this essentially youth sports? Now you're transitioning to adult, and that sort of thing. So how would you say, I guess to kind of summarize, how did, if it did, youth sports prepare you for this journey and ultimately this next journey that you're getting ready to go on?
Well, first of all, I know some people can't say this for themselves, but I had just about every coach I had was a great coach who cared about all the players, cared about me, cared about us doing well, not necessarily winning, which is really, youth sports is not about winning at all. It's just about your development as a player and as a person. So I had great coaches that allowed me to get better as a player and better as a person. And if I wouldn't have had those coaches, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. I don't know if I'd be playing baseball anymore. But that definitely helped me in the youth sports aspect of things. And just like the ability where they're able to teach you like the small mechanics that you need, like obviously how to throw, but more importantly, like the mental aspect of the game. Like you're not always gonna succeed every time. Like obviously the statistic is like you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're in the Hall of Fame. So you're not going to succeed every time. There's going to be some failure. And I just had great coaches who was able to teach me that.
Yeah, I think, looking back at statistics and things like that, I think who those coaches are make a huge impact on that. And so kind of on the opposite side as a parent, how did you make that transition, from, youth sports? You have several different options, right? You have rec league, you have the travel, select, all those kinds of things. How did you kind of help make that decision, and what were your goals in making that decision ultimately for him to do the travel sports? What was it that you kind of saw in that and that decision? Like, yeah, I think we need to go this route in this part of the journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our first step into travel was almost an accident. And I say that because I totally believe God's providence kind of led us in that direction through relationships that we had built up over time. So Jackson's first rec ball coach was his rec ball coach over several years, and was his first travel coach. He had one before that, and he was the one who ended up being his travel baseball coach was the assistant on that team, and then he moved into a head coaching role after that. But we had played on a rec team with a couple of guys, and two of the men that were coaching that team, one of them reached out and called and said, "Hey, we're gonna have a tryout for a travel team. Are you interested in that?" We had not done anything in that. Like we had no idea. We were just rec ball was all we knew. We weren't necessarily looking to get into travel sports, so the call kind of came out of the blue. I was like, "Sure, we'll give it a shot." I asked him. He said, "Yeah, let's go for it." And we showed up to the tryout. He had a great tryout, and they immediately, before we even left, they were like, "Yeah, we want to be on the team." We had no idea what we were getting into. Like, literally not a clue in the world what travel baseball was. And that first season it's amazing that we stayed in it after that, because it was stressful. It was confusing. We were bad. Our team was named the Explosion, and it was not a metaphor. Like, every time we went out on the field, we won one game, and we played, I think, 22 or 23 games. In that game, we won 22-21. So
But Jackson said it's not about winning, so
we learned that quickly. So we had to make that decision pretty quick. Do we care that much about winning? And so that's how we kind of ended up in that spot with him. The second time through, so we have a younger son who's 4 years younger than Jackson, and I was way more intentional about starting that with him, understanding how the process works. I decided I was going to coach, even though I'm not. And I'll say this as if a dad's listening to this and is like, should I coach my kid? I don't really know that much about baseball. You don't have to know a lot. Like, you can learn a lot if you pay attention to the right people. You can learn a lot. And one of the great things is if you, as a believing father, step into that role, you can easily play a big part in a kid's development and the parents' understanding of what this is really about. I loved what Jackson said about the fact that, like, parents need to quit thinking that youth sports is about winning. It is about developing as athletes and developing as people.
It's nice to win, but
yeah, it makes it worth staying. It feels good when you do, because you're like, okay, this hard work's paying off. Mm-hmm. I'm not just wasting my time, because it's hard to stay excited about getting extra reps, hitting, a couple of extra hours a week. It's hard to stay excited about taking pitching lessons when you don't see success on the field. But ultimately, a lot of times you can't, you as the athlete can't be the judge of that, because a lot of times you can't see it. And to me, like, being able to step into that role as a coach the second time through was just made the transition from rec sports to travel sports way easier. And the second time through we were way more relaxed about a lot of things. We were a lot less stressed out about the schedule. So, I want to come back to that development piece in just a minute, because we had a conversation partway through last year, senior year, that I saw the connection happen in him, where it was like, I wanted to win, but this is what I saw.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah. That was a great answer, because there was a whole lot there that we could dive into. And so, Jackson, like, when you kind of look back over your youth sports, and, I think this question is going to give us the best opportunity to kind of capture several things that you shared there. Would you say, it was a success? Did you accomplish everything that you would have hoped to accomplish out of your youth sports journey? And if so, why? If not, what are some things that you maybe feel like you missed out on that you would hope the person who comes after you could experience and could benefit from?
I'm gonna start with that last part, which, like, stuff that I haven't been great at. I'd say, like, even as a high schooler and definitely as a kid, you need to cherish, like, playing with your best friends and playing with your friends, because there's gonna be a point where you can't play with your friends anymore. And just I had maybe not the best job at this, where I would take it a little too seriously. Like, obviously you want to win, like I was saying. But you also need to have fun, because if you're not having fun, then it's going to be miserable to play the sport. So I wish I would have done better with that. And other than that, I feel like I have accomplished just about everything that you need to. Played on some good teams. As a sophomore, played on a really good team. Should have won the state championship, but it's okay. Played with some really good players. Learned a lot. Got stronger, got a little bit better, I think. Yeah, so I think just having fun is really the main thing. I would say to whoever's watching this, just to make baseball more fun, whichever way that is, just make it a little more fun.
Let me add real quick.
Sure.
That last part, that should be not just the athlete's perspective, that should be the parent's perspective. Is my kid developing as a player, as a person, and are they enjoying what they're doing? And am I enjoying doing it with them? It's so important that we do not lose the perspective of, this is not the be-all, end-all. It's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
It is an important aspect of our lives. It is a part of our schedule. And if we believe that it's important enough to make it a part of our schedule, we should do our very best at it. But we also have to keep the perspective of like this is supposed to be enjoyable for them, for us, for our family as a whole. And if we're not doing that, we are really missing out on an important piece. We're going to look back on that time that we spent and be like, I really wish I would have been doing something different.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave sports that way. I didn't want to leave them that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to the temporal aspect of these journeys that we're talking about in this podcast. I mean, that's the whole point, is becoming more aware that all these little mini journeys that we take in life have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. And to be able to look back, and that aspect of recognizing it is temporary, so I've got to make the most of it that I can while I'm right in the middle of it. If we're not winning, if we're not doing whatever, we're taking the thing that's most important. That's those relationships, the relationships that you're building with, teammates, coaches, all those kinds of things. Because those, I would say the relationships that you find is the only thing that would last outside of that journey. Yeah, you're going to take some skills with you, but you're going to hopefully build on those skills at the collegiate level. You're going to maybe play with one or two friends, but you're never going to be with that same group of people again. But those relationships and the memories you've built and the friendships you've developed and the, mentorship that's been developed, those are the only things that kind of transcend all those little journeys that we take. And so, kind of thinking through that aspect of it, and this is really for either or both of you to kind of talk about, with that in mind and this idea of finding what transcends the journey itself, how did you see your spiritual life, spiritual walk blend and kind of be involved in youth sports? And, and you can, share successes, maybe areas that were weak, whatever. So that way, again, we can pass on to that next family that's coming through this. You already mentioned you've got a second child kind of going through it, and it's a better experience. You learn some things. And so what are some things regarding kind of blending and connecting that spiritual walk in with youth sports?
I think sometimes it's tough to kind of do both, because on the baseball field, sometimes people just kind of say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And I know I'm not perfect. I'm sure I know I've done a couple stuff. So it definitely is a little harder, but like you can see, like Aaron Judge said it the other day, kind of like was shouting out his faith with God, and many other athletes have done the same. So obviously there's something there. If you have all these professional athletes doing it, and they are on the biggest stage in the world, and they're shouting out God and their belief in God, obviously there's something there. So. Would you say anything?
Yeah. So I noticed some things in my life as I watched him play, as I walked through that with him, because I was an assistant coach on a couple of his teams, and then that wasn't a great it didn't help our relationship a lot. I had to learn really quickly, like, this is not helping. I'm not helping him, and it's creating conflict between the two of us. So I had to step away from that. That improved our relationship to the point that, like, this past year, like, I think we've connected more over baseball this past year than any other year that you've gone through the whole process. We've gone and hit a bunch together, that sort of thing. It's helped grow us closer together. But from a spiritual perspective, there were things in me that I saw that were kind of idols. Like I idolized trying to make him as successful as possible. I idolized I didn't handle failure of the team or his failure as well as I should have as a father. I was anxious more than I needed to be. It improved. One of the things that you'll learn really quickly in baseball in particular, I don't know if it's this way in other sports. I think other sports move too fast for it. But because baseball is a slow sport. I love that about it. I love the pace of it. I think it's more like life in that way. There's a lot of downtime in between things, and then all of a sudden there's these big moments where things happen. I think as a player, it is a team sport, but it relies so much on the individual. Like if you're a pitcher on the mound, there's only one guy that makes the game go. It's that guy with the ball in his hand. He's got to make the pitch. He's got to make the play. if you're at the plate, you're there by yourself. Your teammate behind you can't hit for you, right? So you're there. And as I watched him go through that, I realized, like, man, I shouldn't be this anxious about it. Like, I am missing out on him and what he's doing because I'm sitting here, like, so nervous for him. And so, like, it sounds silly, but, like, it improved my prayer life because I would find myself before games just praying that the Lord would take care of him, help him today, play with confidence, play hard, and stay injury-free. And I was pretty good, especially toward the end, of, like, just handing it off and saying, okay, I'm not going to worry about this. I'm just going to enjoy it. Yeah. It took me a long time to get there. It was not something that, like, was natural for me. And I'm glad that I got there eventually. I would encourage, parents listening to this, like, make that a part of the practice early on. Like, do not let your spiritual life or your emotional life rest and be put on the shoulders of your kids, because that's not fair to them. It's not going to improve your relationship with them, and ultimately it's not going to make them love baseball or basketball or any other sport more, and it's definitely not going to make them love God more. So
yeah, that's great. As this journey, kind of comes to an end, and you're looking back, I'll ask each of you the same question, just speaking to a different audience. Let's say a young child, maybe Maverick, or whatever, someone who's a student, child who's right in the middle of their youth sports journey, and what kind of lasting thing would you want to say to them, so that way their journey could be even better than your journey was?
I've already said it one time, but I would say just cherish playing with your friends, because I'm not going to be able to play with my friends ever again. And that's kind of sad. Enjoy playing with my friends. And just about all my friends, not every single one of them, but a lot of them came from sports. So sports kind of had that lasting effect on friendship, where, like, just sports allowed me to have the friends that I needed to make it through life.
All right. So from a parent perspective, a parent comes to you and say, hey, I'm looking at youth sports, my son, daughter playing these sports, and we're thinking about doing travel, rec, whatever those, high school sports. What would you tell that parent? Say, hey, here's what I wish I would have known then, and here's how you can make this journey better than what I experienced.
Yep. So I would say two things. And I've already started having this conversation with some of our church members, because we have several church members whose kids are involved in it, and they're trying to make decisions, and they know that I've been involved in it, and Julie has. And I tell them two things. One, and we've talked about this, I just think it's important to continue to bring it up. Make that the baseball part of it, that journey needs to be about development. It does not need to be about winning. Winning is good. Winning is fun. Development is better every single time. And the conversation that I referenced earlier from last year. So we played our major rival. Jackson was pitching to start that game. He did the best he could out there. He worked hard. Didn't go our way. He had, I think, 4 at-bats in that game. And he hit against one of the better pitchers in the state. Went 0 for 4. Got home, talked to him after the game, maybe frustrated a little bit about the pitching part, but, like, we talked about his at-bats. And by the way, I would say, this is kind of a side note, let your kids tell you if they want to talk about the game. After the game's over, like, you don't need to get in the car and rehash the whole game. They may not want to do that. They may be really mad about what happened. It is going to be a waste of your time and theirs if you try to break down every at-bat, talk about everything that went well, went wrong. They don't want to talk about that after the game. More than likely, they want to talk about where we're going to eat. That's, like, the number one question. Are we going to get Mexican? Are we going to get some ice cream afterwards? Whatever. But so we're talking about it. He wanted to talk about it a little bit. And he was like, that's probably the best I hit the ball all year. Went 0 for 4. And he had moved the goalpost to the really actually attainable goalpost. It's not about going 3 for 4, though you might want to. It's about, did I make good contact with the ball every single time? Did I do my job, have a good approach at the plate, that sort of thing. And all 4 of his at-bats, he made good contact, he had a good approach, and just missed a couple. Hit some right at somebody. And that's one of the most frustrating things about baseball. I don't know why people play baseball because, like we said earlier, in what other thing in life can you go 3 for 10 and be like, I had a great day today? You know, like if I went 3 for 10 on my sermons, y'all would – I'd be out of here.
Maybe that's why people play baseball, because it's like, that's a low bar, right?
Yeah,
if I just go 3,
so.
you know.
But that was, to me, he had understood development is really what this is about. I am developing. I'm growing. I had a good day, even though the results didn't show it.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is major on relationships. This should be about relationships with family members. This should be about relationships with coaches who are pouring into your kid. This should be about relationships that you have with your kid and their friends. If you're missing out on that part, you're missing, I think, probably the most important part of the social and emotional dynamic of youth sports. I've gotten to share the gospel with all of his friends, with all of Micah's friends. We've invited them to church. Some of them come to church because they've had a relationship with us that matched. There was some integrity there, hopefully, and not always perfectly. They know that I'm not a perfect person when it comes to these things. There was a game that Micah played here recently in Atlanta and did not go well. There was some controversy, and I showed up after. I was on my way from, it was a Sunday afternoon. I was driving over back to Atlanta. I get to the restaurant where the families are, and they're like, oh, I'd love to see the preacher there at this game, because apparently there were some umpiring issues. And I was like, I guess I have a reputation. I hope it's not too bad, but there are relationships that have built up over time, and those important, more important than the results on the field, because I'm not going to remember wins and losses. I don't think he's going to remember that many wins and losses. It's going to be about, like, I remember this joke that we had on the field, where said this to each other, or the parents in the stands, the conversation that you had. Some of my best friends are baseball parents that we've gotten to know over time, and they've just made a huge impact in our life. So development and relationships, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and so that that's very helpful, because as a parent, and again, I'm kind of at the start of that journey of youth sports, and maybe in the middle, I guess, depending on how old they are and such. But that's what's always tough, right? Trying to figure out, I think kind of going back to that question that you had asked Jackson when you were looking for a college and figuring out where you were going to play is, what do you want out of this? And I think biblically, we're called to make disciples, right? And so if we're going to do that, then it starts with those relationships. And so I think that's a great point to talk about the key aspect of that. And, you're going to meet people that you would not have had the opportunity to meet other places. And some of those relationships can last forever. And then as far as the sport itself, development, if you're not trying to get better at something, then why do it? I think it's, so I think all that is great, relationships from the player's perspective, parent, coach's perspective, all those things is key. So I think, as parents and students and players listening to this, I think that would be key for them to grab a hold of those thoughts that you guys shared. So as one journey comes to an end, I know it's, an emotional thing, and it's always tough to kind of look back and recognize when we're at the end of a journey. However, there's always another journey ahead of us. And so Jackson, you're getting ready to step into the college sports world and playing, on a different level, different goals, different experiences, different relationships, all those kinds of things. What would you say you're looking forward to most about this next journey you're getting ready to walk into?
I would say the ability to play on the higher level. Obviously Pearl River is a really good school, so I'm looking forward to play with those really good players and play against really good players. And then kind of once I do that, I'll kind of figure out what I'm made of, and how this is going to go.
Yeah,
so
that's great. All right, as a parent, even though the youth sports stuff is done, you still get to watch your son compete. What are you looking most forward to in Jackson's next kind of collegiate journey?
Jokingly, the fact that he's getting his education paid for 2 years, I'm excited about that. that is, there's the joke out there that travel sports is not going to lead to always lead to a scholarship for your kid. I'm thankful in our case that it had a part in that. But as far as watching, I'm looking forward to seeing him play at that high level, to get incredible coaching. That's one of the things that every level you go up, the coaching gets a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing what that coaching can do for him. I saw the step that he took when he went from rec ball, travel ball to ultimately to high school. Those high school coaches poured into him and made him a better player. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the college coaches can do with that. I'm also looking forward to seeing him get tested.
Yeah.
I think one of the things as a parent, I want to see, this goes to development as a person. I want to see him grow as a person still. And this next step will be a step in that. Whether he finds out I can continue to do this and do it at a high level, or this is the final step in that journey. I'm okay with either outcome. I just want to see him, one, step into it with his whole self and not leave it with regrets. And two, just see what that testing does. It's going to make him a better person regardless. I think it'll make him a better baseball player too, but it'll definitely make him a better person. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that person looks like.
Yeah, that's great. One last question. If a parent out there was wanting to talk to you, get more information, or maybe they have some specific questions after hearing some of these things we've talked about today, how would you want them to get in contact with you?
Yeah.
One thing I've been thinking about is as a parent, don't let your past failures or successes in your sports journey influence your children's, because I know some have so much success in their sports world, as a parent, that they expect their child to be just as good as they were, if not better. So they'll push them constantly until they see themselves in their child, which can cause a lot of burnout. Or their past failures, they want their kid to be better than them or do what they couldn't do. That could also cause a lot of burnout. So I've seen that a couple times.
I was definitely on the.
That's great.
I was personally on the failure side. I made the green team in sixth grade, and after that, I didn't play baseball anymore because I couldn't hit the baseball. Yeah. Hopefully, my failure didn't push either one of them too much. But you're right. It definitely. I see it in parents sometimes. I've seen it, sitting on the sidelines and different parents having different experiences. So I've definitely seen that. That's a good thought. As far as getting in touch with me. They can email at the church. It's Estes at ridgecrest.net. That'd probably be the best way to start a conversation. Or just find me on Sunday right after church, before church, and we can figure out when to meet. I'd love to talk about it. I don't want to waste all this experience that I've had, all this time that I've spent in this. I want to use it to make other people's experience better because it can be an experience that is very fulfilling, and it can also be an experience that creates a lot of drama and conflict in a family and people's relationships. I don't want it to be that for them. I want it to be something better.
Yeah, that's good. Jackson, let's say a student or someone wanted to reach out to you and ask you about your youth sports journey. How would you prefer them to get in touch with you?
Again, you can see me on Sunday. I'm here just about every Sunday, or you can text me at 601-927-4357.
Very cool. All right. So again, thank you guys for sharing about your youth sports journey. And for everyone listening, reach out if you do have additional questions. Hopefully this conversation has helped. You recognize that, this journey that you are either in the middle of or getting ready to start, there are good things. And, hopefully this conversation leads you to recognize that there are better things ahead. And we pray that there are better things ahead of your next journey as well. And again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to having you next time.